ago.
Do you oppose NATO membership for Ukraine?
I don't think it's practical to have it, personally. I know that our new Secretary of Defense, who's excellent, Pete, made a statement today saying that he thinks it's unlikely or impractical. I think probably that's true. I think long before President Putin, they said there's no way they'd allow that. This has been going on for many, many years. They've been saying that for a long time, that Ukraine cannot go into NATO. And I'm okay with that. I just want the war, whether they are or they're not. But it certainly would seem to be that most people have said that that is something that's not.
Donald Trump has now admitted that Ukraine's membership in NATO is unrealistic and unworkable, and he accepts that reality. Yet, seeking to push further, Keir Starmer declared that Ukraine is on an irreversible path toward NATO. In short, Starmer made it clear he rejects Trump's stance on Ukraine, and that's where the confrontation begins to escalate. The problem is that Starmer has already provoked enough tension with Trump. He and his party hurled the harshest insults, branding him a racist, a pathetic man, a misogynist, a neo-Nazi sympathizer, a sociopath, and a danger to global stability. Even if Trump might once have looked past this, he cannot ignore Starmer now openly challenging him. This is unsettling leaders in Britain who fear that rising hostility between Starmer and Trump could rupture relations between Washington and London. But what exactly is Starmer doing, and what does he truly intend to pursue, that is provoking Trump's fury and threatening his political future? In this video, let's uncover the full story. Donald Trump is not known for forgiveness, but for grudges, retaliation, and his firm grip on international partnerships. And at this moment, Starmer is engaging in a dangerous gamble, one that could spark the sharpest diplomatic clash between America and Britain in decades. When Trump first regained power, he was, surprisingly, ready to set aside Starmer's earlier attacks. He could have clung to resentment. After all, Starmer and Labour had mocked him, condemned his agenda, and sided with his rivals. Yet Trump, celebrated as a dealmaker, decided to offer an olive branch. He invited Starmer to his residence, opening dialogue while maintaining courtesy, concealing his true feelings toward him.
Meeting Keir Starmer, the UK Premier.
Yes, he's coming tonight.
What do you think of him? Some of his colleagues in government are quite critical of you.
Well, I'm going to see him in about an hour, so I have to be nice, right? But I actually think he's very nice. I think he ran a great race. He did very well. It's very early, but he's popular, and I'll be seeing him, and I'll send you.
Yet instead of using this moment to strengthen UK-US relations, Starmer chose to provoke Trump on the most sensitive issue, Ukraine and NATO strategy. And now Trump is enraged. For decades, Britain has carefully guarded its role as America's closest ally, steering through changing governments and global upheavals. But Keir Starmer is now walking a dangerous line, risking a rupture in the special bond between London and Washington. At the heart of this escalating clash is Starmer's decision to defy Trump's position on Ukraine. While Trump prepares for negotiations with Russia, potentially blocking Ukraine's NATO prospects, Starmer has doubled down, declaring that Ukraine is on an irreversible course toward alliance membership. This is not just a policy disagreement. It is a direct challenge to Trump's foreign doctrine, and one he will never forgive.
On that? Well, my position is the NATO position. This was discussed at the summit that we had last year in Washington, where it was agreed amongst all NATO members that there should be an irreversible path for Ukraine to NATO membership.
And you have backed away from that, to be absolutely clear.
No, obviously nobody was expecting that to be.
Secretary of Defense, who's excellent, Pete, made a statement today saying that he thinks it's unlikely or impractical. I think probably that's true. I think long before President Putin, they said there's no way they'd allow that. This has been going on for many, many years. They've been saying that for a long time, that Ukraine cannot go into NATO. And I'm okay with that. I just want the war, whether they are or they're not. But it certainly would seem to be that most people have said that that is what?
Do you view Ukraine as an equal member of this peace process?
It's an interesting question. I think they have to make peace. Their people are being killed, and I think they have to make peace. I said that was not a good war to go into, and I think they have to make peace. That's what I.
Keir Starmer is facing a diplomatic reality he refuses to accept. Donald Trump is fundamentally reshaping America's foreign doctrine in ways that directly conflict with Britain's stance on Ukraine and NATO. Unlike Joe Biden, who pursued a hardline strategy against Moscow and openly pushed for Ukraine's NATO membership, Trump's approach is centered on lowering tensions, driving negotiations, and cutting U.S. obligations in Europe. Trump's shift is not a minor adjustment. It signals a sweeping reorientation meant to redefine NATO's mission and scale back America's role in foreign conflicts. Since returning to power, Trump has unveiled three core priorities that have unsettled Western capitals. First, he intends to bring the war in Ukraine to a close, even if that requires Kyiv to concede territory. Trump has repeatedly condemned Biden's course, insisting that pledges of NATO entry and expanded weapons support only escalated the crisis and prolonged suffering. Second, he wants to reduce Washington's financial and military burden within NATO, arguing the alliance has become a drain on the United States while allowing European states to underfund their own defense.
The fact that, we've given them, in my opinion, $350 billion. That's what the real number is. You don't hear that number. And Europe has given, in my opinion, $100 billion. And they've done it in the form of a loan. And I have a Secretary of Treasury right now who's actually quite brave. He's over in Ukraine on a train. And there's a lot of things happening around that train that aren't so good. And he's going there to get a document done where we're going to be assured that we're going to, in some form, get this money back, because we're putting up far more money than Europe, and Europe is in far more danger than we are. We have an ocean in between. Europe has nothing in between. They have in between, they have Ukraine in between. So wait a minute. So, as you know, Europe is putting up money, and they're getting it in the form of a loan. And the United States under Biden didn't do loans. They just handed money every time somebody walked in from Ukraine. They just handed them money foolishly. This should have never happened. It should have never started. And once it did, other things should have happened. Other things should have taken place.
Trump's third objective is to shift Europe's defense burden squarely onto European governments, making clear that Washington will no longer serve as the continent's automatic shield. Yet despite this dramatic transformation in U.S. strategy, Keir Starmer refuses to adapt. Instead, he openly defies Trump, pressing ahead with his demands for Ukraine's accession and urging an even greater European role inside NATO, moves that directly collide with Trump's vision. This is no longer a simple policy debate over Ukraine's future. It is a battle for control: who sets NATO's mission, who defines the alliance's priorities, and ultimately, who shapes the Western order. Trump has long argued that NATO's relentless eastward expansion laid the groundwork for Russia's assault on Ukraine. In his view, Biden and Europe's leaders made a grave mistake by publicly floating NATO membership for Ukraine, a provocation that Moscow seized upon when it launched its invasion in 2022.
And in regards to Ukraine as well, yesterday you mentioned that you thought Ukraine's NATO aspirations were one of the main reasons that the war broke out. Who do you blame for the war, Ukraine or Russia?
Well, I think that there were a lot of people to blame. All I can say is very simply, if I were president, that war would never have happened. And you know what else wouldn't have happened? The Middle East wouldn't be all blown up, and October 7th wouldn't have happened either. Those two areas, you wouldn't have inflation, you wouldn't have October 7th, you wouldn't have Russia and Ukraine fighting. None of those things would have happened if I were president.
According to Trump, Ukraine was misled with false promises, creating a volatile situation where NATO seemed to push directly into Russia's sphere of influence. He insists that the U.S. must avoid security commitments that escalate tensions unnecessarily, especially when those commitments don't serve core American interests. Starmer, however, has taken the exact opposite approach. He has doubled down on Britain's backing for Ukraine's so-called irreversible path to NATO membership, outright rejecting the argument that alliance expansion was a strategic mistake. By doing this, he not only dismisses Trump's position but reinforces Ukraine's expectation that NATO integration is inevitable. This defiance sparks an immediate clash between London and Washington. If Trump is determined to block Ukraine's membership as part of a broader peace deal, Starmer's insistence on NATO enlargement looks like a deliberate provocation. Now, Trump has made his intentions clear. He plans to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine, even if it means compelling Kyiv to accept territorial compromises. His focus isn't on safeguarding Ukrainian sovereignty, it's on ending the conflict quickly so the U.S. can redirect resources away from Europe toward domestic priorities like economic recovery and border security. Trump sees no strategic advantage in prolonging a costly war, particularly when continued military support drains funds and risks a direct confrontation with Russia.
Zelensky, I think Zelensky is maybe the greatest salesman of any politician that's ever lived. Every time he comes to our country, he walks away with $60 billion. And I like him. You know, on the impeachment hoax #1, he was very good. He said, no, the president didn't threaten me at all. He could have been a grandstander and said, I was threatened, right, Matt? He could have said, I was threatened. So I like him. But he's the greatest.
Trump once said he liked Starmer. But now, Starmer has firmly positioned himself as an obstacle to Trump's peace ambitions. Britain insists there can be no talks about Ukraine without Kyiv's direct involvement, effectively rejecting any settlement that doesn't fully align with Zelensky's conditions. Starmer has doubled down on supporting Ukraine's military objectives, NATO accession, expanded aid, and strong security guarantees. By publicly reaffirming his backing for Ukraine's NATO bid, Starmer is raising Kyiv's expectations, making it far harder for Zelensky to accept a negotiated settlement. Trump interprets this as deliberate interference in his diplomatic mission. If Ukraine continues to believe NATO membership is realistic, it will be less willing to make the compromises Trump says are necessary to end the war. This puts Britain squarely at odds with Trump's peace plan, a stance that could trigger serious diplomatic and economic consequences for London. Even though Trump previously overlooked Labour's harsh words, he can no longer ignore Starmer's open confrontation. Past insults were politically motivated. Opposing Trump's current policies signals a deliberate challenge, one that is bound to provoke a strong reaction. Trump is actively crafting a peace agreement for Ukraine that could reshape the global balance of power. His approach contrasts sharply with Biden's. It emphasizes direct dialogue with Vladimir Putin, reduces America's military role in Ukraine, and disregards European resistance. Trump sees himself as the ultimate dealmaker, determined to end the conflict on his own terms.
But President Putin wants to have peace now, and that's good. And he didn't want to have peace with Biden.
Was that conversation with Putin?
And you tell me why that is, okay?
By reaffirming Ukraine's NATO membership bid, Starmer is giving Kyiv false expectations, making it harder for Zelensky to accept compromise. By siding with European leaders opposing Trump's negotiations, he is fueling resistance to the peace process and deepening fractures within NATO. By rejecting any settlement that excludes Ukraine's alliance entry, Starmer is actively undermining Trump's diplomatic initiative. If Trump sees Starmer as a barrier to his peace plan, he will act decisively to push Britain aside in international affairs. Trump is not known for patience, and if he believes Starmer is obstructing his ability to secure a Ukraine deal, he will respond swiftly. Already, he has signaled that the EU and the UK will not be central players in the peace process, effectively removing any potential for sabotage. History shows Trump frequently retaliates against leaders who defy him. Angela Merkel faced threats of U.S. troop withdrawals after criticizing his NATO policy. Justin Trudeau endured tariffs on Canadian goods after a minor diplomatic challenge. Emmanuel Macron was sidelined after advocating for European defense independence. Starmer now risks repeating the same error. If Trump regards Starmer as an adversary, he will not hesitate to strike back. Whether through tariffs, reduced military cooperation, or diplomatic isolation, he holds the power to impose a steep price. Starmer may believe he is taking a principled stand on Ukraine, but in reality, he is walking into a confrontation Britain cannot afford. Starmer now recognizes he locked himself into a Ukraine policy shaped under Biden and fears retaliation that could take many forms. One of Trump's most effective tools against disobedient allies is economic pressure. The UK, still navigating Brexit's fallout, is particularly vulnerable. Trump could impose trade tariffs and investment restrictions, forcing Starmer to reconsider his confrontational approach. If punitive measures were applied to UK exports, the damage could be severe. Key industries, steel, agriculture, automotive, and financial services, rely heavily on American trade and could face massive losses. One study estimates British industries could lose as much as £24 billion if Trump enforces new tariffs. For an economy already grappling with stagnation, such an impact would be crippling. Beyond economics, Trump understands the UK's reliance on Washington for defense and security through intelligence sharing, joint military projects, and access to advanced technology. If he interprets Starmer's position as hostile, Britain could see restricted access to sensitive intelligence, weakened defense cooperation, and delays in advanced U.S. weaponry. NATO allies might be encouraged to elevate other European nations, leaving Britain sidelined in key security debates. Such a shift would mark a dramatic decline in the UK's global defense standing. Starmer now realizes that Britain cannot afford open confrontation with America. While he envisions a stronger European role within NATO, Europe alone cannot substitute for US military dominance. His only viable option is to begin appeasing Trump. Otherwise, the consequences could threaten not only Britain's standing but Starmer's own political survival. Many now believe he will have to go to great lengths to regain Trump's favor and secure Washington's support once again.
The position that Trump is going to be taking in relation to us generally. So Brexit is now going to turn out to be a tremendous asset. Because what is he going to say? He's going to say, I like those little guys. I've always rather liked the UK. I've got a little few investments in there. I'm going to give them a trade bounce. I'm going to do some kind of trade deal with them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to impose 20% trade tariffs on the EU, who I don't like. And where is our old friend Starmer going to be on that? At one stage, he'll be smiling, thank you so much, and the other realizing that he is going to be dancing to Trump's tune for the next 4 years. This is going to be the greatest thing I have ever seen, watching socialists having to deal with somebody of the right and having to bow at the knee to them, as they have done to the BLM.
Why do you think Keir Starmer is choosing to defy Trump on critical policies? Is it an attempt to demonstrate strength and independence by taking a stand against Washington? Share your views in the comments below. Do you believe that opposing the US on major global issues will earn Trump's respect, or will it only provoke his anger, risking retaliation? If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for ongoing updates on British politics and the dramatic changes shaping it. Until the next video, stay connected.